Thank you, Heidi.
All right. All right. Well, it's 2:01, so let's go ahead and get this kind of kicked off here. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Jonathan Brecker, and I'm the chairman of the Arkansas District Export Council, and I want to welcome you to Grow Your Exports. Um, as I said last week, very excited about this series, not only because it's our very first educational webinar in 2024, but it really does lay the groundwork, bits and pieces each week of kind of what it takes to begin the process. Obviously, it doesn't take you from A to Z, but it lays the foundation for you. Of course, I got to start off by thanking our sponsors. Thank you to the Arkansas Economic Development Commission and Arkansas Manufacturing Solutions. Without their support, we wouldn't be able to host this 6 week series. So thank you to them for making this possible. I really appreciate you all being here today. I'm not going to steal Rudy's thunder, but you're going to have a chance to talk to Sam Rothschild. He's one of my favorite people. I really enjoy the way he leads and the way he communicates, and he's just a wealth of knowledge. I do see a couple of new names on here from last week. So, just real quick, for those that may not be aware of who the deck is and what we do, we are a private nonprofit organization that brings together experienced international business people with potential exporters. Each council member has been appointed by the U.S. Secretary of Commerce for our real world expertise in international trade. We have a ton of experience throughout the council, from attorneys to people like Sam to Rudy to me as a banker. So we've got really every sector covered. Now, saying that, we don't always have all the answers, but we can connect you to somebody who does. So, hopefully we kind of become a strategic partner for you in your exporting um, life going forward. My hope today is that you walk away from this webinar with a little bit more confidence in beginning your exporting. And if you have any questions that you don't really feel comfortable here, I do hope that you'll turn on your screen and ask questions or put them in the chat. But if you want to do it on a little bit more of a private basis, you can reach out to us at exportarkansas.org, and then one of our members will get in touch with you. Before we begin, I want to ask everyone to keep themselves muted and raise your hand if you like to ask a question. That way, we don't get in the background noise interrupting our speakers. So, thank you for your help with that. I'm going to kick it over to Rudy. Rudy is the previous chairman of the District Export Council, and he has recently been retired from the Arkansas Economic Development Commission. He owns a business called Strategic Business Services, where he helps companies in a wide variety of exporting needs. He's also a partner with Cross Border Business Consultants, which is a team of business consultants working together to help companies to initiate activities in other countries. So, for these reasons, Rudy is the education chair of the deck. Rudy, thank you for spearheading this as always, and I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that, Jonathan. As it turns out, we're going to do something kind of fun. We're going to start off with a very brief poll. And Miss Heidi, if you would put that up, that would be swell. Okay. The question is, what famous American beverage has been exported since 1899? Dr. Pepper, bourbon, Coca-Cola, or Pepsi? And of course, it's interactive, so you can click one of those and submit your answer.
This is fun because I have absolutely zero clue.
Ready to quit?
Yeah. Let's go ahead and see what it says.
Share the results. The correct answer is Coca-Cola.
Wow. Yeah, I would have bet on Dr. Pepper. I know it's been around for a really long time. Coca-Cola. Well, there you go. Well, very good. Well, so today we're going to have Mr. Sam Rothschild to be uh, the presenter on our current topic, which is developing customer relationships, which is really really important in international business. We have the luxury in the United States of having a very strong legal system, and if something goes south with our business relationships, we know that if push comes to shove, we can go to the courts and get fully expect to have due process, and that we'll have a fair decision on the part of the courts. But in many countries that is not the case, and as a consequence of that, uh, they rely on developing trust in the relationships of the people they do business with. And obviously that takes longer. You can't just go and you meet somebody for 5 minutes and all of a sudden there's this intimate trust. That happens very rarely. And so developing a relationship is going to be key to the success of any business endeavor that you do internationally, and quite frankly, more and more here in the United States as well. So as it turns out, Sam is the Chief Operating Officer for Slim Chickens Development Company, and he's been doing this kind of work for a really long time. He's been a senior development officer for 25 years in the international field, and specifically in franchise sector. He's also been teaching these classes on grow your exports, and specifically this one on developing relationships for at least a couple of years now. And as a consequence of that, we've really enjoyed the way that he does that, and the depth of information and knowledge that he has. And for that reason, we're asking him to do it again. And so, Sam, if you please would, go ahead and take it away.
Yeah, thank you, Rudy. Thank you, Heidi, Jonathan. Yeah, look, I hope we have a fun, interactive session. We have a lot to talk about. As Rudy said, I've been doing this since the mid 90s. Personally, I've visited over 50 countries, have done business in over 30 countries throughout my career at Slim Chickens. I'm one of the partners, and I'm the chief operating officer and actually the chief development officer as well, both domestically and internationally. We have a lot of fun, exciting things going on at Slim Chickens. We're heavily penetrated in the UK. We just signed a deal in Berlin. We have a lot of conversations going on in the Middle East, and I've got a few things cooking in Malaysia and Singapore. So there's a lot of work to be done there. And I think this topic, which is one of my favorite topics, is about developing relationships and how that is critical to getting a deal done. I will tell you, Rudy said it. You got to make a connection with somebody if you think you're going to get a deal done. And if you can't make that happen, your chances of success diminish quickly. So what we'll do is we'll discuss different techniques and some of the things that you really need to think about. What are some of the do's and don'ts? So I will tell you that I've learned a lot through my international experience that you got to work with a very culturally diverse customer base, and you have to understand what are some of the cultural do's and don'ts, and we'll go through it. And also then how do you manage your customers' experience? As Rudy said, I franchise. So I am exporting my intellectual property and our products and brand around the world. And it's critical that there's a lot of elements going on here. We're not selling single purpose things for retail or industry. This is a very fluid, ongoing relationship between a franchisor and a franchisee. And as Rudy said it earlier, the first thing you have to do is establish credibility, that you know what you're doing and you know how to connect with people. And we'll discuss building your network, leveraging your website if you have one or you're going to need one, and then challenges of the international markets. As we see here, there's just another graph on, this is the second series about developing relationships. Developing customer relationships. Cultural sensitivities are best handled a few ways. One, you have to be very humble in your approach and you have to be sincere of what you're talking about. I will tell you, in my career, a long, long time ago, I was doing some business in Central America, and we were building a restaurant, and I was very, very frustrated with some of the construction guys, and they wouldn't show up on time. They wouldn't show up at all. And I was dealing with the franchisee in the market, and the guy just looked at me after a confrontation. He goes, "Man, this is how we do things. You're not in America anymore." And it was a lightning bolt moment when I was like, you know what, I do have to kind of change my approach or listen to how they do things because I'm not in the States. And you really have to understand how that really works and become kind of a student of the world and be willing to learn about people's culture and history through asking questions. I travel extensively through the Mideast and Asia and through Europe, and I ask what might be simplistic questions, but I sincerely want to know whether or not you're driving around with people or you're just talking about current events. Please try to stay out of political conversations because you have no idea who you're talking to and what their affiliations are. What I do find interesting these days is they want to talk about what's going on in the U.S. and our politics, but that's for another day for sure. Um, I try to use a few spoken words. Learn how to say hello, goodbye, and thank you is always nice. Again, make sure you pronounce it right. Sometimes they'll give you some slack. At least you're trying. I think at times, and it's somewhat comical at times. And small talk's important. Look, I'm doing a deal in Malaysia right now. This thing's been going on for quite a while. The legal system in Malaysia to franchise is probably one of the most egregious in the world and invasive, which is fine. But while I'm working through the legal system, the government legal system, and then the lawyers who are working on the deal, I got to keep that relationship going with the people who are going to do the franchise. And they're excited about doing it. But we met. We actually met in London in some of our restaurants. I met their families. We spent a lot of time together. And why it's important, look, the development deal that they're going to do with me, if it comes to full bloom and fruition, they're probably going to be spending 50, $60 million to open up all the restaurants that they're going to open. And that's not, in my world, that's significant amount of money. And people really want to know, who am I doing business with, and is this thing really going to work? And I will tell you from my perspective, I always go into this wanting people to understand that we're going to do this together and we're going to try to develop restaurants. And my goal is for you to be successful. And my goal is to make sure you make money. Because you're not doing this for fun. You're doing this because you think you can get a return on that investment. And that kind of leads into this. Look, you're dealing with people, not just companies. And I don't care what you're selling. There's somebody within that organization that's going to be your key contact. For me, it's the guys who are investing in opening restaurants. So it's critical that you get to know these people. Rudy said it best. At the end of the day, the way you behave and the way that you talk is whether or not they're going to build trust. And I'll tell you that sometimes you got to burn some trips and you got to burn some FaceTime on Zoom, which has been a blessing. In the 90s. There was no such thing as Zoom. So you had to get on an airplane and go do things. but they got to believe in what you say. And that really means being consistent in what you're saying. And your ability to just make that personal connection is critical. Take time to understand the culture and the customs. I'll give you an example, one where I failed. I was doing business in the Middle East, and I'm somebody who likes to cross his legs when we're talking. Mm-hmm. And I was in a room full of guys, and I think we were in maybe the UAE. And one guy said to me one day, he goes, "Please put your feet down." And I said, "Why?" And he goes, and there were picture paintings of the ruler on the wall. He goes, "It's disrespectful to show the ruler the bottoms of your feet." I was like, wow, that's pretty interesting. And then the next day I did it unconsciously again. And the guy kind of looked at me and I had to put my feet on the ground. And then I was like, all right, I'm going to learn this one because he was really offended. And that's fine. But you learn those things, you adapt really quickly, don't make a big deal out of it, and you just move on. The other thing on nuances of language, not only when you're dealing with somebody who's maybe translating to somebody who's on the call with you, because sometimes I'm on calls with several different people or I'm in these meetings, you got to make sure you speak pretty plainly and direct. Do not use sarcasm. Sarcasm does not translate, right? And they don't get the joke. So you got to be very careful. Now, if they speak English and it's really good, great. But I've been in multiple settings where I've actually had to bring a translator to make sure that the person who was translating properly. So I'm like, is he saying what I think he's saying? And they're like, yeah, no worries. And then look, just read people's body language and be willing to meet their needs. The biggest thing I get frustrated on, not on the relationship side, but when you start moving forward, I'll give you a great example of building a trusting relationship. So, like I said, I'm doing this deal in Malaysia, and the guy who's doing the deal with me, they're in a multi-billion-dollar corporation in many different industries, and he's part of the family. So he's like next generation. They're propping him up. These guys have billions of dollars. So he's using their attorneys that are in-house counsel who are dealing with my attorneys in Malaysia, and their guys he's just being unreasonable on some stuff. So I called him. I said, "Do you want to get this deal done, or do you want our lawyers just to continue to get in the way?" And I said, "Why don't you just go talk to this guy and tell him to ease up? I know what you want to do. You know what I want to do. Let's just cut through it." And he's like, "Oh my God, I'm so sorry. I'll talk to him." And then 2 days later, we finished the paperwork. But if I didn't have that relationship with him, I could have never made that phone call because he's like, "Hey, who are you? And, why are you coercing me or banging on me?" He and I are calibrated. We just know we want to do this together. And he was just really obliging. Our attorney got on the phone, and next thing you know, that paperwork is done. So it's critical. Here's what I'll tell you. If you're going to do business with people internationally who may or may not know you or your products or your services or what you're trying to do, always under promise but overperform. Makes you look really good. If you sometimes get verbose or you're trying to talk big about your company and then you under deliver against what you're saying, it becomes an issue. If you're competing with somebody in your space, you gotta touch on what I call the reasons to believe. Is why is your product, why are your services, why are your quality better than your competitors? Because a lot of guys in my space and others, they're talking to other people. You're not the only one that they're talking to. So you got to get your talking points together as to when you're in this sell mode, because in the relationship side, you're still selling. You're trying to get a deal done. There's this kind of always this, fine line of weaving your trust and trying to get your message points across, because whenever you leave, at the end of the day, they want to keep going with you. If not, after the second meeting, you're done. So this thing is really critical. And look, you got to listen to their needs. So this thing where it says the customer is always right, yeah, to a point. But the other thing is, and I'll tell this to you, and I was telling this to somebody the other day, because you're out there selling to somebody, at the same time, you got to understand if you want to sell to them. Yeah, you got to lead. Yeah, you got to introduce to somebody. Yeah, you're understanding their company, they're understanding yours while you're trying to build all this rapport. Um, for me, I walked away from a deal in Saudi Arabia last year because I figured out after a series of meetings, I'm like, I don't want to do business with these guys. They don't line up with the way I'm thinking. And I don't want to get into a several decade relationship with a company full of people. I'm like, yeah, maybe not so much. So I always say you're interviewing each other, and trying to figure out whether or not you want to do business with each other. And then if you want to, get some leads going, attend local trade shows or with other channels with your partners. Make sure you got plenty of marketing materials and support. One of the things that we do that I think is pretty cool, I have a digital um, piece of POP literature marketing material that has 4 videos in it that really just explains my product versus them looking at pretty pictures or reading a pamphlet that you might hand out.
If I can jump in for just a second, Sam,
Yeah,
one
sure.
of the things that I always tell my clients is that assume that things are different than what you're used to.
Yeah.
I think that as human beings, we kind of assume that everybody does business or understands certain things the way that we do. But in particular, when you're doing business internationally, you should assume just exactly the opposite, that the way they do things, the way they interpret things is different than the way that the way you do. As a matter of fact, I was on a call with a partner of mine from Dubai, and she was using a word and it just wasn't fitting in terms of what my understanding was about what we were trying to accomplish. And I come to find out that she had a misunderstanding the way that Americans use that particular word. And so listening is really, really important. And once again, listening for differences and recognizing that we don't do things the same.
I think you're spot on. It's also true in email correspondence, um, because they'll 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 parse words differently, and you got to go, okay, I know, I think I know what they're talking about here.
Absolutely.
Also, one thing that's really cool, if you can pull it off, on Word documents now in email, it'll do auto translation. So like I do some business with some guys in Mexico, and a lot of these guys they won't write in English, but they'll write in Spanish, and then I'll be able to hit the translate button. It'll translate it right to English for me. But Rudy's right. Words and parsing words and how people use words, you got to figure that out pretty quick. Um, I'll talk about this really quick. One of the issues is why would people buy from you versus your competitors? And of course, a lot of guys are shopping for price, right? They just want to get the best deal, depending on what it is that you're selling. At the same time, they want to understand why your product's better. And so again, I'll just say, get your reasons to believe. What are the 5 or 6 things about your company and your product that you can communicate very clearly? A lot of people say it's your elevator speech. I'll say this is an elevator speech, but it's about 50 floors, so you need a few minutes for that. But again, just get these ducks in a row for yourself. Things that make your customer smile. This is on the deliver side. And look, the other thing that you're going to do somewhere during the part of this building trust and building the relationships, if they're smart, savvy business people, they're going to start reaching out and start getting references on you guys. So on the deliverable side, if you're delivering a package or box or a crate or whatever it is or IP that you're delivering, if things have to happen from a shipping perspective, it has to be hassle free. You have to make sure you get all your documentation in a row. That there's no freight damage. If it is, you got to understand it and you got to take care of it right away. If you are doing things with heavy machinery, And you have to do things that are different for local countries. You need to understand that. I'll give you an example. We use fryers here to fry our chicken. I have restaurants in Turkey, Middle East, all throughout the UK. There are different electricity requirements in those countries, and there's different ways that they use natural gas. So we have to be able to work with the vendors and suppliers to make sure that those pieces of equipment have the correct specifications internally, because they're completely different than what they are in the US. So before you start exporting, you need to, if you have products that are like that or anything else, you need to understand how that's going to translate. So you're going to need to do a little bit of homework when it comes to those types of appliances or fittings, and they do metrics in other places where we don't. So it's just work depending on what it is. And then if you have different labeling or certifications that are required, you'll learn that through your discovery. Different countries require different labels. We ship food from countries to countries, and some of that work is very tedious, and you find out a lot of things. So you need to sort that out as you're building your network and understanding what it is you can sell and what some of the hassles are, and just some of these issues here, just pointing a few things out. I'll just say this: back up your product, warranty with parts and service, let them know you're available to them when they need you. I will tell you that in my network, I have about 65 people here in my office now. They pick up their cell phones quickly. If somebody calls me, I will text you back, or send you an email or call you right back as soon as I can. It's not hard to send a text these days. Pops up. You can say, hey, I'll whatever small message that you want to leave. If you're the key contact in the organization, whatever it is that you're selling, a service or whatever, man, the stuff that you're doing has to work. And when it doesn't and they need you, you need to be there for people and to connect them to the resources that they need. These types of things will build long-term satisfaction. But you also have to be able to explain that to them before you get a deal done. And you got to be able to give them examples on how you do it. So they understand, oh, okay, these guys can sell me this, but they can support my business and help me when needed. Additional helpful hints. There are resources for you here. I'm sure Heidi and or Rudy will send these out so you can do your homework before you go places. Now it's, you got Google and you got all these other things. You can do a lot of homework, but the government has many different areas for you to get some resources. I think one of the important things to understand, and it's in one of the prior and one of the series after this, is about how to go about getting deals done. And I will say your organization has to give you funding, whether you own it or you work in it, and you're going to have to pack your bags and make trips. And I will tell you, I have flown halfway around the world for 2 days to get there and only spend 2 days on the ground, and I'm back on a plane and I'm out. Because there's just certain tasks you can't do on Zoom. If you're really trying to close a deal or trying to work a deal, you're going to have to make the financial and the mental and physical sacrifice. Now, good news for me, if I go to the UK, that's a much shorter trip than going to the Middle East or going to Southeast Asia. But that's fine. You got to do it if you want to get deals done and you want to start exporting. You're going to have to do what you got to do to get a deal done, and ask for orders or get things over the goal line. And sometimes I've had to make more than one trip to the same group. I don't like doing that. I like mopping things up via Zoom, depending on where they're at. But if they're close in adjacencies and you're going to Mexico or Central America or up to Canada, those are easy flights to get those things done. But if you have to do this to keep things moving, you're going to have to make that happen. And sometimes they'll come see you. but mostly they're going to lay back and let you or some of your people do the legwork. But those types of things cement deals when they know that you're going to go out of your way and you're going to spend a lot of time and money to come see them and spend a couple days with somebody. That just furthers the trust, your commitment to them. It does not be, it becomes better and less transactional. And look, if you're there, take them to dinner, take them to lunch. You get more stuff done at dinner than you do if you get a 2 hour window to do a PowerPoint presentation. Take them to dinner and have some fun with them and get to know them as people. That's how you cement, this whole relationship building versus, hey, I had a 2 hour meeting and I left. No, you need to spend some time and allow yourself that time to do that.
And Sam, one of the things that you've kind of addressed, I want to put a slightly finer point on it. As Americans, we think that we can fly to Wisconsin, and show them our pump or whatever the product is, and fully expect that that we'll walk out with a contract. That's just not generally the case when you're doing business internationally. I mean, it's very, very common to make multiple trips. As you pointed out earlier, the virtual meetings have really added a different dimension and has really been an opportunity for us in times that that wasn't the case before. But still, don't necessarily expect that you're going to fly to Dubai and you're going to come back with a contract. That's not not realistic.
No, that's a unicorn. But it can happen. But you got to work it. That's the best advice. Look on this next slide here. This first half of this or this first bullet point is the one I want to spend time on. You got to prove that you've got a team in place, depending on what it is that you do, and you have a support network beyond yourself. Now, if you're a 1 or 2 person company, okay, well, then you got to be calibrated. If you're part of a much larger organization, your organization has to at least provide you with who your international resource will be. Doesn't necessarily or always be a dedicated resource, but if you have to plug into different departments, you have to have a go-to. And it's also part of your pitch that, here's all the people in my organization that are going to be working with us to get this not only get this transaction done, but as we said in the earlier slide deck, to be able to provide you the service and support when things don't always go according to plan. Or they want to maximize the effectiveness of the stuff that you've sold them, and they need to tap into subject matter experts because you as the salesperson isn't always going to be the one that knows everything. But whatever widget that you're selling or IP that you're selling, that people got to understand that they don't have to go through 3 people to get to the answer that they want. Just wire them indirectly to the person, whether it's a technical question or a quality question. Pull your team together and explain to them and provide them with the people that can, quickly and most effectively provide them with the service that they need. And it's critical. I will tell you, in every deal that I've done internationally, they want to know how are you going to back up your promise. And a lot of times I get people to come here to the States. I do restaurant work, so they want to see everything that we do. A lot of times now, since I have a very large business in the UK, I'm meeting them in the UK. So if they're from the Middle East, it's 8 hours to get to the UK, and they love going to business people in the UK that have money. They like going to the UK. The guys from Asia, it's a longer commitment, but they also see I make the commitment. I meet them in the middle. I got to spend the day getting over there. But for me, that's a nice outpost that is highly representative of the brand. And it just makes it easier for everybody and it moves deals along. I guess the thing that I should say that's not in my presentation is time kills deals. The longer you drag it out, the longer they can think about whether or not you're the right people or you're the right product, or that they've decided they don't even want it anymore. So moving deals along and understanding your critical paths to be able to get to yes and a contract done. I have somebody who works for me. She's our vice president of franchise development in the United States. And when we get a hot lead, we're all over it. So we do the same thing internationally. Leverage the web. I'll just say that again. One of the things that come through is whether or not you're advertising on TikTok, Instagram, LinkedIn. We do a lot of PR work around the world. So there are 3 trade magazines for the food service industry. There's Nation's Restaurant News, QSR Magazine, Franchise Times, and then there's 2 global pieces. We have a PR company that we've hired, and they're out there proactively pitching Slim Chickens, so they'll write stories on us. And some of them I do paid placements. So not only would I put an ad in there, but if you advertise in their magazine or their digital online magazine or whatever you want to call it, they'll do feature stories on you as part of it. So if I spend 10 grand or 5 grand on a placement, then somebody, maybe not that issue, but a subsequent issue, they'll do a full page interview with me on success and all the things that you're trying to do. But one of the things that you have to do is you're going to have to gear up your website in your organization. One, if you don't have an international tab, you might want to tell your web designer to put an international tab on there so people can kind of understand that. And then, you have to make sure you have all the appropriate stuff for that. Now, some guys have great websites, and the ones that are really cool is the companies that have already decided to have different translations. So if you're looking at something and you're like, hey, a lot of my customers speak Spanish, you can go over and tick the tab and everything turns into Spanish or any other languages. So those are very, very helpful. But your website just has to be enhanced. It has to be continually improved. And like we said earlier, COVID leveled the playing field, and at times Zoom is your new travel agent. So there's that. Look, I'm not going to go through this graph. This is something that you'll get. But for you, under qualifying a country, I will say there are a few things, and you'll probably get this in another series, but when I'm going out there to try to do deals, the first couple of things I start looking at is how's the government? Is the currency stable? Are there any outbreaks of war going on? And what does the consumer need? And right now, obviously, I'm trying to get a couple deals done in the Middle East, and it's a little rough over there right now. Also, to Rudy's earlier point, I'm having to be much more understanding and knowing that these deals are going to drag out a heck of a lot longer in some of these places until things get sorted out. Again, I'll just kind of bookend it with this. You got to have your product differentiation. You have to have your pricing matrix. What are you selling it for? Make sure that you gain some basic language skills. You do your homework on the web for your customers. And also, I'll just tell you, and I probably need to put it in a presentation earlier, Rudy. You need to do your homework on the company you're doing business with as well. They usually have a ton of great information on their website. So walking into early calls or early meetings, having a really good baseline understanding of who it is that you're going to be doing business with is really strong. And then, there's embassy outreaches and other things like that. So you can do your homework on the people that you potentially are going to do business with. Frequently asked questions. Is there a demand for your product overseas? I'll just tell you this. I'll give you an example. I'm in the chicken business. we serve a premium chicken tender and wings and chicken breast sandwiches. A lot of countries in Southeast Asia, they don't eat that. They eat dark meat. Chicken is the largest consumption product in the food service industry. It's the only protein that does not have a religious objection. Um, but in some countries in Southeast Asia that we've done our homework on, they don't eat chicken tenders. They don't even know what it is. They eat thighs and legs and other types of stuff. So my business isn't going to work there. But there's other countries around there that where they eat my product. So yeah, so when we're developing our matrix, we know which countries have the highest per capita consumption of chicken, that they meet my psychographic demographics. Um, at the same way, whatever it is that you're selling, you got to know where your customers are, and you target your efforts towards them, especially in your PR and adverts, or what conferences or trade shows that you're going to attend. Because for your time and money, go paint a laser on where you want to go and go find some stuff. And hopefully you'll get some inbound as well. Should I can be concerned about civil unrest and anti-American tendencies? The answer to that question is, oh yeah, especially now. And you know, things will calm down. You have to understand, and Rudy said this earlier, you know, sometimes it takes me a year to get a deal done, or a year and a half to get a deal done. So you have to be patient. Some go faster, but honestly, things will settle down at the end of the day. What sort of things should I bring if I go out on my first trip? Are gifts appropriate? Um, I, I usually hold off until the second visit to bring a gift, because if you bring one and they don't have one in some countries, they're going to take that pretty poorly, because they're going to go, oh man, I underdelivered. This guy just gave me a gift and I've got nothing for him. Like, you show up in the US and you hand them a bag full of koozies and chocolates or whatever it is to do an icebreaker, and leave them with some stuff, great. Over there, in some countries, not so much. So be very careful. I usually do it for the second trip. If they hand you something, then you know that, you know, thank you very much, and you know, show appreciation. Um, how do you protect your company against foreign disruptions? You know, you can't always be that forward looking, but you know, you got to be on the lookout for things that are going on. I'll give you a great example, right? You look over in Asia and they're building electric cars right now, and they're all trying to find the same stuff to build these cars. And I don't know if you guys are in the electric car business. Um, so are there things out there in the macroeconomic world that can help you sustain your product viability or access to resources? I'll give you another example. For us in Turkey, they're one of the largest or Ukraine is one of the largest exports of wheat. And that stuff got shut off. And I think it's turned back on. There was scarcity in some parts of the country or some parts of the world where people are worried about being able to get products to make their products. So those are the types of things you just have to be aware of. And is e-commerce popular overseas? Yeah, in pockets. But you know, that's a kind of a wide open topic. So I'm going to pause there. I see there's 5 questions in the chat. So I'm going to get to the questions. Also, let's see here.
And while you're doing that, Sam, I just want to, you know, kind of close up on what Sam was saying, and that is these questions are sort of questions that you need to be asking yourself, and you really wouldn't ask yourself these questions if you thought that business is done exactly the same in other countries as it is done here. It isn't. The chances are that they're the same is small. And so you need to be doing your research. You need to be asking your questions. You need to be assuming that it is different than what you're used to. If you start off with that premise that it is different as opposed to that it's the same, you're going to wind up being in much less surprised than you would be if you thought that it was exactly the same as it's done here.
All right, we don't have any questions. Those were all posted up by Heidi, I think.
Okay, very good. Well, I'll tell you what, let's go ahead and if you guys want to ask a question, feel free to unmute yourself and ask your question. Michael?
What's up, Sam?
Hey, how's it
I
going?
mean, good. So, like over the years, like what's like for the Slim Chickens franchise? What's been y'all's biggest hurdle, like significantly increasing your exports over the years?
Yeah, I will tell you, I went to I don't right now what I do majority is I export my intellectual property. Like I am physically not exporting anything out of the United States to go into these other countries. So we spend there might be some equipment, but all the food and everything that we do are sourced around the world. And the materials to build and construction these restaurants are sourced locally. All this stuff is kind of readily available. But a lot of countries, for example, they won't accept our food products because they don't like the GMOs that we use in our crops and other things. So they have non-GMO regulations in a lot of countries. So we have to go in there and find things and source things and do some recipe modifications. So other than that, the only other hurdle to growth, honestly, was in the beginning financial resources and human resources and focus. And now that I've got more resources, now I can get more aggressive on going out and getting more deals done. Because I didn't want to go out there and do things and my organization couldn't handle it.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah.
Chris, did you want to ask something? Chris Adams? Okay. Well,
Well, Rudy, I think we did it.
I tell you what, you were so good that you just answered every question that people had. That's a good deal, right?
Yeah, or I scared them. Who knows?
Well, I appreciate everyone attending, and I hope that we were able to answer the majority of your questions or concerns. Once again, do the research. We have a lot of resources for that, and obviously the different RDEC members, like Sam and Jonathan and myself, are resources of information that we're happy to talk to you and see what your needs might be. And if we don't happen to have an internal resource that can help you with that, then we have plenty of resources externally to the RDEC that we can hook you up with. So don't be shy. If we can be helpful to you, feel free to give us a holler. And that is you might want to actually take a picture of this particular slide because it has some great links. But we are going to be sending all this information to you as well, because obviously a lot of information. I'm sure you didn't write down 1/10 of it, and you don't need to. The other thing that Miss Heidi, do you want to talk about this here? The
Oh,
legal aspects of international sales contract?
yes. Graham Catlett, our international business attorney, will be speaking on March 13th about legal aspects of an international sales contract. And this will be an in-depth review of that.
Absolutely. And as it turns out, next week, as you know, this is a six-part series of classes on growing your exports. And I will be presenting next week, building out your company's global infrastructure. And Heidi, you had a slide up just a second ago
Okay, let me get that back up for you.
on this giveaway that we're doing.
Oh, yes. There we are.
Yeah. Yeah. You want to talk about that?
Oh, sure. Yeah. So we are going to do a raffle, so to speak, of everyone who has attended today. I will put your name in a hat and draw the name, and I'll give you those results tomorrow morning, because I don't have the little spinner up right now. But this is a great book. It's actually in workbook format, so it takes you from A to Z, looking at getting started with
Miss Heidi,
successful marketing.
Yeah, so this was a unique opportunity that got presented to us. This was Mr. Hopkins had written a book on the name of Offshore Riches in Exporting. And he had reached out to us via the National District Export Council and asked if we would mind taking a look at his book and seeing where he might make some improvements or anything as far as relevant topics go. So we decided to do this as a giveaway with his permission, of course, because it just paired up so perfectly with this Grow Your Exports course that we're providing here. So later on today, we'll spin the proverbial wheel. And I think Chris Adams was our winner for last week. And we'll reach out to this week's winner tomorrow morning at some point.
Excellent. And I think, Ms. Heidi, correct me if I'm wrong, you probably will have the recording of today's session in the next day or so. Is that correct?
Oh, yes, sir. I'll get it done, and it'll be posted, and everyone will have it by noon tomorrow.
Perfect. And Ms. Heidi, if you would go ahead and put up this last slide with the different contacts. Yeah. Feel free to contact any of the people on this slide. If we can be of service, please contact us. Also, it's really important that that we have feedback from you as to what you liked and didn't like, and the improvements that you think that we could make in our training to be of service to you. So the mechanism for doing that is by filling out the survey, and if you would do that, we would really appreciate it. All right,
Yeah,
Jonathan, you got anything else?
Yeah, Sam, thanks again. It's always a pleasure to hear you speak about your adventures. I hope to be like you when I grow up one day.
Me too.
And congratulations on all the success that Slim Chickens has seen, not only recently, but the years past as well. You guys are doing an amazing job. Congratulations.
Appreciate you. Appreciate everybody joining us. If you need anything, call me. Be more than happy to.
Will do. And then again, lastly, I'd like to thank our sponsors, Arkansas Economic Development Commission and Arkansas Manufacturing Solutions. But anyway, thank you all for your time this week. I look forward to seeing you all again, same time next week.
All right.